Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 3 of ISE's CPQ Summer Journey. I'm Tony Fleischman, filling in today for Sherry Woodrick, who's taking some time this week for summer PTO. With me today is Charles Hood. He's a familiar voice to all of you, I'm sure by now, and Charles will be handling the bulk of today's session. So I wanted to do a quick recap of what brings us to today's session. In session 1, we covered quotation automation and the tools available to you to improve quality and timeliness of outbound customer quotes, being more responsive to those, consuming less time internally, and creating professional quotes. Session 2 was focused on visualization and leveraging state-of-the-art tools to dramatically increase the impact of online configuration tools. So we look back to 5, 10, 20 years ago, trying to visually see what we were building. Today, that's just assumed that we can see the car, the piece of furniture, the window, whatever it is that we're building. And that's what session 2 covered. Today's session will focus on integration of Infor CPQ with other applications. And it's our expectation that if you liked what you saw in the first 2 sessions, you likely started to consider how the suite will work within your existing footprint. So Charles will be discussing native integration of CPQ with common CAD systems and also with ERP, specifically with Infor XA. So if you think of taking a quote, multiple quotes, taking an order, how does that integrate back into the ERP system? How can I integrate it to numerical CAD data and seeing that as well? And I think you'll be pleased with what you see. ISE has worked with several customers taking them specifically to Infor XA. So a quick note before we get started, if you have any questions, please enter in the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we'll address them as we progress through the presentation. So with that, Charles, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. And very grateful to everyone who's here today and everyone that's been following along this CPQ summer journey. This is session number 3, as Tony said, and today's title is Migratory Data. And we are indeed looking at how this cloud CPQ system, this suite of applications, integrates with other applications. So here's today's agenda. We're going to do a quick recap. Tony already did an excellent little recap. I'll just quickly recap sessions 1 and 2 for anyone that wasn't able to attend. That would include a couple of the highlights real fast. Then we're going to look, this is kind of something I just discovered recently since session 2. So things are happening and changing fast in the cloud CPQ world. It's a great time to be alive, so to speak, because stuff is happening and new things are being announced and developed. And you'll see that on my second and third bullet points. We'll then be talking about the Cloud CPQ 2D SolidWorks add-in, and there'll be a very exciting announcement at the end of that section. And then we'll be talking about the XA, the CPQ to XA integration in general, and then in particular, how to complete the CPQ to XA integration. So that's our agenda for today. So we're going to start with a real quick recap of the first 2 sessions. Session 1 focused was quotation automation. We focused on the enterprise quoting application within the cloud CPQ suite. You may remember I was being a little bit of a stickler for nomenclature. The entire suite is called Cloud CPQ. What we typically called CPQ with on-premise installations is now really Enterprise Configurator or Enterprise Configuration. Sometimes you hear it described. And so you have Enterprise Quoting and then Enterprise Configurator. You may remember there was a EQ Designer and other things. There was the CPQ tool to Design Studio to develop your rule set. So it's a whole suite. And then you may remember Infor OS, Cloud Infor OS was rolled into that. Infor Document Management, Infor Ion, Burst, and some other applications as well. We saw EQ in action, entered quotes, configured items, converted quotes to orders. And then we looked at a lot of quotation augmentation. The big one there was generating the quote document, the official quote document that could have your company's logo. You could incorporate the visual augmentation, the engineering drawings. You may remember with the 2D, we included our schematic, if you will, of the door with all the dimensions and everything. And there was other things. We talked about comments and versioning and things like that, and then converting quotes to orders. So kind of the big takeaway image I remember from session 1 was the quotation document and how you could auto-generate that, then attach it to the quote. It then lived out in IDM, in document management, which is part of the suite if you are running Cloud CPQ. Session 2 weeks ago, was the summarized title was Visualization Approaches. And we talked all about visual engagement. As Tony was mentioning, it's just assumed you can at least see a photo of what you're configuring. And of course, we took it way, way beyond that with able to spin and flip and rotate and zoom in and out. And you may remember the exploded view on the transformer in particular. You could see all the inner components. We then talked about QR codes. You may remember we had an audience participation segment where Sherry, at the very beginning, showed you all a screen that had a link for a QR code reader that we've been able to make work very well, at least in the iPhone side of the mobile device universe. And hopefully some of you were able to download that, or you already had your own QR code reader on your phone or tablet, and you were able to participate in that augmented reality experiment. So that was pretty neat. You may remember I was showing you the hot tub or the home spa, and we were able to cause that to kind of float or levitate in the background of my mobile device, whatever my mobile device was looking at. And of course, Sherry had a real good example with that chair, the configurable chair, because she actually had it, like as if it was right there in her living room. So that was pretty neat. And then lastly, we talked about the optional Coleman AI, artificial intelligence for cross-selling and upselling. And that's a very new addition to Cloud CPQ that is an add-on module. But it's just amazing what that can do. And we talked about what that does and how it has a little widget on the side and it's suggesting other products as you're going along, much like when you're on an e-commerce site, of course, Amazon.com being the classic, when you decide to look at a product, once you scroll down just a little bit or off to the side, it's already recommending, similar products and things like that. So, since you like this, you might also like this, that kind of thing. Okay, so this was one of the main takeaways. This was that exploded view of the configurable transformer. We were definitely in visual configuration mode. We weren't just looking at a static image. As you can see in the upper left, they were definitely in visual configuration mode. We were able to explode that view. We're then able to drill in and look at the transformer coils and the windings on the coils. You may remember we looked at the L brackets and the mounting bushings, and we're able to click on those replaceable parts so that we could order spare parts. And that was a real good example of visual configuration with an exploded view. And then here was the QR code with the augmented reality. And it was that hot tub kind of floating. I was trying to show it like floating in a sea of orange wildflowers. I was trying to create this just real Edenic image of tranquility. You just chilling out in the hot tub in a sea of wildflowers. So anyway, but you may remember we were able to configure that hot tub. We chose the family or the model number, and then we were able to the color of the shell, the color of the inner lining, things like that, we were able to configure. Once we had all that, we were then able to generate the QR code, and then we could, whatever our mobile device was looking at, that image got superimposed on it. Okay, so that's where we've been. So now let's keep going. So this really logically belonged to last time, but I want to show it to you now. So this is visual drop configuration, yet another technique, another tool in your toolkit in Cloud CPQ. And I want you to see this. And this is also a good example, great opportunity to show you this website, because at some point in this journey, I needed to show you this. So let's take a look at it. Okay, if I can get it to pop up here. There we go. great. So it's on my other screen. Give me a second. I'm gonna come over here. Great. So yeah, if you have any interest at all in Infor-CPQ, please take note of this URL, infor.com/solutions/sales/configure-price-quote. So obviously the last part of that's the what CPQ stands for. So lots and lots of links here at the top. But the part I really want, and a lot of good other documents, white papers, executive briefings, analyst reports. I know Sherry referred to one of these, the return on investment for CPQ. So all of that's there, case studies. The part I want to come down to, and I'm trying not to scroll too quickly. Don't want to make anyone seasick. So here's what I want to look at is visual configuration. You may remember the first session rather, we hit the parametric, the 2D parametric drawings with the door. We hit that pretty hard. We saw how as we were changing configurable options on the door, it was automatically recalculating length, width, and then all the intermediate widths of the panels and the rails and everything. And you may remember even when we had this curvature, we had this arc or this radius, and it was recalculating that. So it was doing all the geometry. Talked some last time about 3D drawing capabilities. But the one thing I didn't get to hit, and I didn't realize this excellent little demo exists. And today, I just want to show you this interactive 3D visual configuration. And I'm kind of loosely calling this 3D drag and drop, and you'll see why I'm calling it that here in a second. So there's this little demo here that I definitely want to show you. Okay, so there's that. Let me shut that down and let me expand this full screen. Okay, and so you're gonna see how there's gonna be hot zones, just like there were with the chair 2 weeks ago. Remember the chair, we could change the color of the material and we could change the color of the mesh, and it would, the zone on the chair would automatically update no matter how zoomed in or zoomed out I was, no matter how I had the chair rotated or flipped over, it knew the zone that needed to be updated when I changed the color of the material or the color of the mesh or the color of the, the legs and the arms and all that. So let's take a look at this. So again, I call this 3D drag and drop, and you'll see how it's an excellent way, very interactive for setting up certain configuration parameters. So let's roll the video. So you can see that you got that hot zone, that kind of bookend or brace, whatever that is. I think of it as a bookend for, binders or manuals. Then you've got that kind of like cubicle cubby hole where you could put things. And so you're moving it around, you're trying to see what'll fit, what looks good. And so it's all interactive. It's keeping track of everything, all the locations. So you are defining parameters in the enterprise configurator. The rule set is keeping track of where you're at. All right, so that was that. I hope that you got the point there. So it's interactive, and you're dragging and dropping, you're moving things around, and in the background, enterprise configurator is keeping track of everything you're doing. Okay, so that is again what I call 3D drag and drop. All right, good. And again, I wanted you to see that website. All right, so again, there's the website. If you want to take note of that, I'll linger here just for a minute, just in case you want to take note of that. That is kind of the encyclopedic website for all things cloud CPQ, including integration information as well. And if you want to rewatch that short little video, that little demo, you just click the button for visualized 3D configuration. Okay, all right, I'm going to linger for another few seconds, and then we'll move on. But that was definitely I couldn't in good conscience move on without showing that to you. So there it is. There's the rule set that we just looked at, kind of the computer workstation rule set, if you will. And then of course, another rule set that I have seen in other demos is this kind of work shed, backyard shed. And so the location of the door, the location of the windows, the thickness of these kind of corner guards, even some of the parameters on the roof and all that. But the windows and doors in particular, you can, if you want to add another window, move them around, all that kind of stuff. It's all happening, real time, interactively. And you're actually defining parameters in your configuration for that configurable item. So I just wanted to add that to the exploded view, to the hot zones, to the QR codes, to the augmented reality, and just the whole 3D visualization experience that Cloud CPQ can bring in general. Okay, now let's get to today's topic in particular. So we're going to start looking at the Cloud CPQ. Actually, on-premise has this as well. The CPQ 2D SolidWorks add-in. So what this allows you to do, you can see my kind of tagline there, it allows you to create 2D files that the CPQ rules can then manipulate. Okay, so what we're going to do, we need to go back and take another look at the 2D parametric drawings. So we're going to do that here. So let me go back to, so we've been through EQ. So I think I'm safe to just reopen a quote that we've already created in the past, and we discussed, everything related to that. So, but what I want to do is go back to the 2D parametric drawings so that we can then, again, I'm going to go to my product catalog. I do have under doors, I do have this configurable door. Okay, and we talked about the info link and the materials and all that several times now. And you may remember these profiles. I can pop up these images, pick what I want. So that's all good. But it's actually on this dimension screen, and I need to be looking at the image. Okay, and I think you all remember what we did. I've already even mentioned it today. So we have this 2D drawing, and the thing I need to highlight, because it's going to tie into the SolidWorks add-in, is this drop down here, this door style. So notice there's 5 particular options. We got the square panel, square top, what you typically consider a door, if you will. Get a little fancy, you can have the arch. You do see that sometimes with an arch panel. Here's an arch top. You don't see that too often because the door frame obviously needs to accommodate that, but it is possible. Here's a radius panel with a square top. And then lastly, you have kind of what I call the castle door look, the medieval castle door look. So you have those 5 different options. And again, you may remember from 2 weeks ago, first session rather, 2 sessions ago, if I change any of these dimensions, it's going to recalculate all the intermediate dimensions. The width, it's kind of shows up a little more dramatically if I have an extra wide door here. So watch, so you have calculated all that, recalculated, all my intermediate distances. I can then, of course, you may remember, I can increase these rails and or panels. For example, I'm going to move this lock rail. Notice it's 41 here, and that's over here. So if I decide to raise that, let's raise it, do something dramatic to 48. So there we go. So that got a lot bigger than all these other measurements automatically adjusted. You remember all that. So we've been there. Just wanted to revisit it, but I want you to, in particular, remember these 5 kind of base options here, with each one having like a base 2D drawing behind it. So let's finish this quote, or at least this line item, and we're good there. Okay, go back to my quote real quick. Okay, there it is. I just added that successfully to my quote. Go back to my quotes. Okay, so I'm done there for now. All right, so let me minimize this. Now keep in mind what we just looked at, and remember those 5 base types or styles of doors. So what we're talking about is and the full name is CPQ 2D Design Automation SolidWorks Add-in. Oh, okay. Trying to say all that without taking a breath. CPQ 2D Design Automation SolidWorks Add-in. So that's the full name for this add-in tool. And if you have SolidWorks and you're running SolidWorks, you're licensed to it, and you have engineers using SolidWorks, this shows up as an add-in on the SolidWorks menu bar, and it gets invoked when you start going into the sketch functionality. I better not say too much more. I'm not an engineer. I know enough about SolidWorks to be dangerous, so to speak, but I know the sketch functionality invokes the add-in, but it's there on the SolidWorks menu bar. We're going to see a screen capture here in a second. Now, the point is, if you have this add-in, then you can use SolidWorks with this add-in, the sketch functionality in SolidWorks with this add-in to develop the base CPQ 2D automation models. And again, those would correspond to what I was just showing you with that door, those kind of 5 base door models. And then you have the base model drawing, if you will, or I guess I really should call it a model, but that 2D model is then ready to go. Then your CPQ rule sets, when you start designing your rule sets in CPQ Design Studio, your rule sets can then reference and manipulate those 2D models that you set up in SolidWorks. So you get all the kind of rich and deep functionality of SolidWorks to create some really robust 2D automation models. Here's a screen capture from SolidWorks. You can kind of see SolidWorks in the upper left there. And notice here's the button that got included. And notice you're in sketch mode, if you will, and it's invoking this add-in. And so you're building a 2D automation model that your CPQ will recognize and your rule sets can then interact with. So once you go through rule set training, you understand about how rule sets work and you understand how this model's built, then you can do some pretty amazing stuff. So it just allows for some great flexibility and extensibility of these 2D automation models. Here is the document if you're interested in knowing more about this. Here's the document you want to look for out on Infor Support Portal or Infor Concierge. Okay, I'm sorry, I struggle with that word, concierge. Either please look out there, and this is the document that you're looking for. So whether you do a search for it or you could just, there's those nodes to search for documentation, go to Infor CPQ, the cloud, the most recent edition. This is the document you're looking for. And I'm going to give you the title here, and I'm going to, again, try to say all this with one breath. Infor CPQ 2D Design Automation SolidWorks Add-in User Guide Cloud Edition. Okay, and you can see this guy's been around for a while. We're already at release 21. So this 2D automation has been linked to CPQ for a good while now. It's very mature. It's a very robust tool. Now, hold on to your hats, though. I feel like an infomercial, but wait, there's more. Hot off the press. And like I said, it's a great time to be alive. This just got released, literally just got released. You can see it's release 2022.08, which should sound familiar to us because we're in August 2022. So the brand newest, hot off the press version of CPQ Enterprise Configurator. Again, that's what we normally think of as the configurator tool, but in Cloud CPQ, it's actually called CPQ EC. And that's the configurator tool that, that you invoke to do a configuration. And notice the 5 bullet points, all 5 of them are great news, but the top one is of immediate concern to us. 3D design automation is now supported in the cloud, okay? So great, CPQ Cloud now 3D design automation. So that 2D design automation has been there. It is available on premise. It's carried over to the cloud, of course, but now in the cloud, you also have the 3D design automation being supported. I haven't even seen the document on that. I'm gonna try to look for it a little harder, maybe open an incident to get it, but it's so new. This is literally so hot off the press. So I want you all to see that. And this is the type of thing we can expect with Cloud CPQ because they're just putting out new things, new functionality. If you happen to be a member of the Infor CPQ community out on Infor Communities, that's part of Concierge. They did, Randy Kubacki did an excellent 5-year Infor CPQ Cloud Roadmap presentation back in January. So you can go to that community and look at that. Some pretty amazing stuff there. And just, recently, it was back in February that we got the Coleman artificial intelligence, that AI plugin I was telling you about last time. And now here in August, there's 5 new features been added, and including this 3D design automation. And I'm also very interested to find out what in the world this enterprise quoting new pricing insights widget is. So I'm excited about that. But for today's topic, I really want to hit hard this 3D design automation is now available for Cloud CPQ. Okay, that was kind of the front end. There's, you may remember from our first session, we talked about you can integrate CRM packages with enterprise quoting. So opportunities and quotes from CRM packages, things like that can be brought in. I just talked about the SolidWorks 2D plugin. There's other examples as well, but I definitely need to leave some time here because we want to talk about everybody's favorite Infor ERP package, which of course will be XA, and talk about how exactly things happen with XA. So let's take a look at that. Let me go back to my EQ. You may remember that in the first session, one of the last things I did with my quote, a couple of my quotes, was I submitted them. Matter of fact, and I've done a bunch of them since then. You notice they all say submitted status. You may remember that that was an option for the quote, and that is when I would initiate a push to the ERP package. And under your application settings over here, you do let EQ know about the ERP package that it's linked to, so that the two of them can talk to each other. And then they talk through Ion. They talk through a data flow that you set up in Ion Desk, and you then push the BOD, what they call the business object document. It's XML, and that pushes from EQ into XA. So what happens is EQ encrypts, if you will, or encodes, and it's not really encryption, it encodes the data for a sales order. You can also push quotes to XA, by the way, too, and you can then convert the quotes to, so we're looking at data flows. So you can then push a quote BOD. So it's a process quote BOD from EQ into XA, then XA will receive that quote, or you can push a sales order. So, as far as that's a business process. Once you understand the inner workings of EQ, and of course XA real well, then you can make a decision where you want to convert your quotes, whether you want to do it in EQ or in XA. But either way, you can submit quotes and orders to push to XA. You use a data flow that joins EQ to XA. So basically, whether you're XA cloud, whether you're XA on premise, and then you have this cloud CPQ instance, you join the two of them together. Now, I was kind of very optimistic, probably too so, hoping actually we'd already have cloud CPQ and XA talking. It's extremely close. It's not my place, obviously, to give you a date, but we have seen the preliminary integration documents. So I think that's great. So when that happens, our data flow here is actually going to be green. It's going to be active, and we are going to be able to push from our cloud CPQ, EQ in particular, to XA. So that's going to be great. And so that's how that happens. So I want just to stress that. I suppose I could go back to a quote real quick just to kind of emphasize where exactly that happened. So if I open up one of my open quotes that's eligible for this, notice I can convert to an order. And then when the order is there, I could then push the order to XA if that's how I want to do things. So watch this now. So anyway, then I end up in XA. There you go. Now I know exactly. So now there's what I have. So this would kick off the data flow, and it would kick off a BOD, a business object document, a process sales order BOD in particular, into XA. XA would receive that through system link, and it would create the order header, the line items, and then any other records that it would need to do. Okay, I'd love to be able to show you that, hopefully by our conference in roughly a month. That'd be great. As soon as I hear the news that Cloud EQ and XA are talking, we're going to do our best to get this all hooked up in real time. So I'm really anxious about that. Okay, so that's how you get the orders into XA. Okay, so now we need to talk a little bit about XA and what goes on there. So in XA, EPDM, and these screen prints are Netlink. If you haven't seen them before, you should be able to translate what you're seeing here to more familiar PowerLink screens if you're still 100% PowerLink. But these are release 10 Netlink screen captures. So it's real simple to set up an item as configurable in XA, and you can see on the bottom there highlighted within the item revision, you just have to say it's a configurable item. It requires configuration, and then that it takes the product configuration management version 7+. PCM is the former branding of CPQ. So it used to be called PCM, or product configuration management. Fortunately for those of us that work in the XA space, it got rebranded because PCMs mean something entirely different to us in XA, especially those that do system maintenance and perform updates and all that. We all know about PCM tapes and PCM updates. Okay, and then you launch a configurable item from a CO line item, and a special icon exists. You have to be in a template for a configurable item, and you press that icon, and that will launch if you want to. From Netlink or PowerLink, you can invoke CPQ this way as well, or of course you could invoke the configuration from EQ, but this is another way to invoke a CPQ configuration session. You click on this special icon, it knows the URL, it knows how to launch the web service, then you're good to go. Next thing you know, you're in the screen and you're specifying your configuration options. Okay, I already talked about that. So yeah, let's take a look at this in real life. So here I have a release 10 Netlink session going. So let's look at item revisions so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. I do have some configurable items. Again, I'm chomping at the bit to have EQ and XA talking to each other. But notice here, and this is pretty cool in Netlink. So notice configured item requires configuration, and then the type product configuration management version 7+. So assuming that I have a CPQ rule set up with the same name as my item number, I would be able to launch a configuration session for this item from XA if I wanted to. So I'm calling this item 778, where we're building bicycles. That's what this stuff is. And I had this one set up as a configurable item. Okay, so very good. Let's go back to our home screen. And then let me show you what I was talking about with the CO line item. So I'll take a quick look here at the line items for one of my bicycle orders. Okay, so if I were to create a brand new CO line item here, this could be a quote line item as well. You may remember I mentioned if you're going to launch CPQ or the EC, if you will, the enterprise configuration, so that I can then start actually performing configuration from XA, then you do need to be whoops, you need to be in a template that has that kind of magic icon, if you will. It needs to be linked to the configuration ID input box. And then if you enter a item number, you may remember mine was 778, you know, all the other stuff you need to do real quick. I need a quantity. I'm actually going to do 4 of them, let's say. Okay. Now, if I had Cloud CPQ hooked up, I could then click this button and I would launch Cloud CPQ. That's how easy it is. Then what happens is you go through the configuration and it comes back with a configuration ID. We're going to talk more about this in a second. It initially gives you like a temporary config ID that starts with SKU. You know, it's a SKU number, just temporary. And then in the background, CPQ and XA are working feverishly together, handshaking, passing data, and they're building an EPDM item process that reflects all of your configuration options. So the bill of material, all the material in the bill of material will reflect options that you made during the configuration session. And then your rule set, provided you set up your manufacturing rule set, your manufacturing rules correctly, and that's part of rule set training, then you would automatically have generated a routing as well. And then of course in XA, if you have a bill of material, you have a routing, you marry them together, that's an item process. So CPQ and XA work together through unattached jobs and they build an item process, a unique item process in the background, and it'll have the config ID attached to that item process. And within a site config ID combination, those have to be unique. So within a site, there can't be more than one item process with a particular config ID. Okay. Was Netlink. All right. Okay, so I've already mentioned what it takes to be a configurable item in XA. Okay, I mentioned launching a configurable item. Okay, now here's a little closer. So when it returns from CPQ, you have this temporary SKU number. So you've been through your configuration session and you have your 2D or 3D, you have all your visual augmentation, visual enhancement, all that stuff has taken place. The user has selected all their configuration options, everything's valid, and you've generated a configuration, and that has now been passed to XA, or more accurately at this point, it's been passed to the IBM System I, host machine that where XA resides, where the interface tables reside. And now XA and CPQ again are working feverishly to build that unique item process. Okay, and this is what you get on the bottom there. Initially, they're working to build the item process. We have a little presentation scheme we set up that allows us to see when that process has finished. There's some details going on, but basically it's once that config ID flips, if you will, that's the term everybody seems to use for that. The config ID needs to flip. Once it flips from an SKU number to a valid numeric value, as we'll see on the next screen, there it is, then our presentation scheme turns green. Yay. Okay, so I'm good. So I know that CPQ and XA successfully built a unique item process. Okay, it knows it's a configurable item or a configured item. It has the valid config ID, and of course the item process token is one of those tokenized values that really only means something in hexadecimal, but still we spell it out for you just so you can see that it's not blank. Again, there's two UJobs or unattached jobs involved here, the configurator processor and the EPDM processor, they're both involved. Okay, I just want to stress here on this slide, the endpoint of the vanilla CPQ to XA integration is a unique item process. So the item process, as usual in EPDM, marries together a bill of material and a routing for that configuration. The alternate BOM ID will be the config ID, and the routing ID will have a non-blank sequential value. EPDM handles that. Okay, so if you're listening closely, your ears might have perked up. So the endpoint is an item process. And so as our good friend Will Shakespeare would say, therein lies the rub. I looked it up, and Hamlet actually said in Act 3, Scene 1, there's the rub. But everybody seems to quote that as therein lies the rub, so I'll run with it. But just remember, I do actually know what Shakespeare actually wrote. So just so we don't get any comments, Tony. All right, so what most folks want, though, is a unique item revision, of course, in EPDM, not just a unique item process, because then items have a lot more characteristics associated with them than item processes. And you can think of, accounting classes, item accounting classes, bill of material accounting codes, commodity codes rather, unit weights, all kinds of things like that. Okay, so now we'll go back to Netlink. Oops, sorry. Netlink. There we go. All right, so what we have in this environment, we've installed our tool called Unique Item Generation or Unique Item Generator, and it allows for CPQ generated configurations that end up as unique item processes. It allows the process to complete and become a unique item revision. And you don't lose your BOM and routing, those stay the same. Although if you have configured subassemblies, we can convert those to unique subassembly item revisions as well. So that in that case, the bill of material would change in that sense, that you'd end up with unique items all the way through your indented bill of material. But that's what this does. And again, in our mind, it completes the CPQ to XA integration, because you go all the way from your CPQ integration with all your visual enhancement and visual abilities, and you have generated the line item and you've generated the unique item process. Now you take that item process and you convert it to a unique item revision. And again, the item revision has all the abilities, functions, and associated database fields that you'd expect item revisions to have. And of course, you can obviously incorporate extension files if you have, if you've extended the XA item revision business object, if you have, fields that are unique to your XA installation, or you've used some of XA's user fields, no problem at all. Those can all be handled here. So I'll just show you real quick what's going on here. We have this business object, and this one is the system link processes control. I find it's best to show these like in, one thing I love about Netlink, you can increase the screen, the font size, just because you're running within the browser, using the browser's real estate. So this is more of an IT business object, so I won't dwell here too long, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what you're doing with System Link. You're identifying your IBM System I host, and then you're controlling how you're going to handle, the user ID and password and whatnot associated with System Link. Are you going to run the unique item generator from a icon, that you click on, which is technically a mass user action icon, or are you going to let the unique item generation happen automatically with the end order processing or the end quote processing that XA performs? So you could have this set up so that it takes place with the end order processing. That's kind of a set it and forget it. It'll just run. It'll do its thing. If you want to review configured line items, take a look at a sanity check on the costing and pricing and whatnot, then you can tell it, no, I need to use a user action, which means you need to click on an icon. So that's what that is. That's a kind of like, again, more of an IT control file. And this is the one that has the most interest. This is what actually controls the item numbers that get generated if you want our tool, the UIG, the unique item generator, to do that. So for example, in this case, because our site is MKE for Milwaukee, all the new item numbers that are generated for the unique item revisions, they'll start with MKE dash, and then each one will just grab the next item number. And of course, that gets updated sequentially. Every time you use one, it bumps it up by one. So that guarantees uniqueness of the item numbers for the enterprise item, the item revision, and then all throughout the rest of XA. If you want to, though, you can use custom logic for item number. We have several customers that are running our unique item generator, and they are using the CPQ rule sets to generate the item numbers. So that's fine. So our tool then passively receives the item number that they're generating. They're taking care of the logic to generate the item numbers. And typically, if you're doing something like that, there's some smartness to your item numbers. You know, you got smart item numbers, and some of our places, the smart item numbers are really smart. I mean, there's so much packed in, encoded in there. It's amazing to me. I always joke that the smart part numbers are so smart, they have PhDs. It's just amazing how much you can pack in there. But if you're not going to do that, then you would use the built-in logic MKE dash and then the next sequential number. Okay, just briefly, we'll touch upon some of these other things. Do you want configured subassemblies to also be replaced with unique item revisions? If yes, you know, that's the radio button there. The use prefix just means to use the prefix value, of course. There are some kind of site level defaults you can set for some of these values that are really kind of basic values for an item revision. Of course, the default unit of measure is one of the most basic. You can't create an item revision in XA without a default unit of measure. And then the item class, item accounting class. The implementation status, of course, is required as well. And then, of course, if you have IFM, a charge nature can be added. And then if you need to be using reason codes to create item revisions, you can populate a default reason code. All righty, you can have items generated for quotes. Typically, that's not done because you don't know you're going to win the quote. So why generate new item revisions? But with orders, you know, obviously you've won the quote. Now you need to make the item. You need to manufacture that configuration, and of course, you need to then pick, pack, and ship it, and invoice it, and all that kind of thing. And then this radio button here just controls whether you are going to reuse unique items when there's a config ID match. And what that means is, hey, our tool says, hey, I've already seen this config ID before, and it's already linked to a unique item. So that's almost always a yes. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot more unique items get generated, but it is optional. And then lastly, we allow you to define, if you have a lot of business logic set up inside templates, in IDF level 2, you know, in PowerLink and NetLink, then you can define a item revision template for the item revision create or copy, right, that the UIG tool will use. Same thing with item warehouses. You can have a template defined. That way, if you, templates can store a lot of business logic, and that way we can leverage that because SystemLink recognizes template names, provided the template names are valid. SystemLink recognizes them. So that's one neat way to kind of marry together your template business logic and SystemLink through our tool here. Okay, so let me, there's nothing I'm really going to update there. Let me go back to, we do a lot of logging in our unique item generator tool. It goes down to the SystemLink request and response level. We do provide a schedule job, or you can run it as a host job. We actually have it over here. It's a host job that will allow you to purge those records on a periodic basis. You tell it the date, the purge before date, and it'll purge everything, you know, on that before that date that you specify. So that way you can keep those clean. But those are, what we find is those, it's super handy to have those around for a little bit. You know, what a little bit means is up to your company, of course. But if for some reason XA ran into errors creating an item warehouse, creating an item revision, an enterprise item, a bill of material, a routing, a CO line item, you'll be able to find out. This is the request. So of course, if you had an issue with your SystemLink response, you could then come back and look at your request. You can actually export all of these records. NetLink at release 10 has a great export functionality. That's obviously beyond the scope of this session, but you can export real easily and then analyze, what's going on, why you had an issue. Then you'll find out what it was. Maybe it was an item class was not defined or something like that. So you can come in and you can look at the system link response, export it if you need be, and do some real fine analysis. And that way, you work out the little kinks, the little bugs, and you get this thing going, and then you can pretty much just leave it be. And provided you never give it bad data, it should work for you. Okay. So there's more business objects here. Like I said, we do a lot of logging, but we do allow you to purge the logs, because obviously you don't want to have old log files, sitting out on your system. And there's more I could talk about here about these other business objects, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what the unique item generator tool does. And I think you understand the whole point is to be able to convert the unique item processes that the CPQ to XA integration produces, to be able to convert those to actual unique item revisions. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna minimize that and minimize EQ. Okay, so we'll just talk a little bit more here. We're on the home stretch for sure. So UIG is the short name, the acronym for the unique item generation product. It is something we developed and that we support at ISE. We developed it at ISE, we support it. And it does definitely complete the CPQ to XA integration, at least the vanilla form. And again, it allows a unique item revision. You can then create a unique item revision for each unique configuration. So it extends the vanilla CPQ to XA integration, and I like to say it standardizes it, because it brings it into sync with some of the other ways that CPQ integrates with some of the other ERP packages. So you end up with a unique item number if you want it to, And I kind of, this is my little acronym here, I'm trying to be cute. 5-fold federation. This is the entire flow now. So you start off with some type of web portal or XA graphical user interface, PowerLink, NetLink, ComNet2, enterprise quoting, and you enter a valid CO line item or a quote line item, and it's a configurable item. You run through the enterprise configurator in the cloud CPQ, and you specify all your configuration options. What happens then is, once everything's done, you click the finish button, and you're done, and you then create that order, and that pushes the data onto the IBM machine, and it's now in the CPQ interface tables. And again, that's where those two unattached jobs wake up, and they start working feverishly to create you a unique item process with its own BOM and routing. And that's all built based upon the CPQ data. And then you can use the UIG, the unique item generator, to then generate a unique item revision and all the other records that you would need to support a unique item revision: enterprise item, item revision, base prices, BOM, routing, item process, a brand new CO line item for that unique item, the item warehouse, if I didn't mention that. And then the UIG does other things too. It can do a cost roll for you on the brand new item if you want it to. That the item was just born. Of course, you can delay that if you want, but it could do that for you if you want, and things like that. We also do other post-processing updates as well.
Quick interjection on that, Charles.
Yeah.
Go back one time. I think this is a really important piece here. If you think about the level of integration that's provided here, I can quote something, I can sell something, I can have it land in XA as an order, I can build it using standard bills and routings, and I can see it from historical information of either perhaps a very complex configured item or a simple configured item, but I can see what I sold to that particular customer, leveraging all the history and the data that's in XA. I mean, that level of integration is really, really impressive. And just a quick note there, and we've been, Charles specifically, and ISE in general, has been working with Infor CPQ customers for more than 10 years. We were the first to integrate CPQ to XA. Way back, at least 10 years ago. So that integration is very substantial. What Charles mentioned about what's coming out in August here specifically for the new enterprise quoting tool in CPQ in the cloud-based version of CPQ. So we really like the fact that Infor is leveraging what they have built over the years. We're extending that with things like the unique item. It's just a really nice end-to-end integration. And it kind of comes back to what I said in the beginning of the call is as people are thinking about these tools, they start to think then about how am I going to make this work with what I have in place? And here's the answer. Good stuff. Thanks, Charles.
You're welcome. I can stop at this point and take questions if we had any in the chat box. This is certainly a good stopping point for me. Let me advance to the slide that shows my contact information. This is the UIG Business Objects looked at through NetLink, running inside a System I workspace, running inside of Infor OS.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the chat box. I don't see anybody out there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But if you have any questions, type them in now, and we can address them as they come up.
Yes, be glad to do it. I'll try our best. And of course, anything we've covered today, or even anything we've covered on all three of these sessions, enterprise quoting, any of the visual enhancement, visual augmentation from last time, anything I covered today, from the drag and drop visual design tool to that 2D automation add-in for SolidWorks, to the link between enterprise quoting and XA through the Infor OS Ion BODs, the business object documents, how XA handles that through System Link. So any of that's fair games. The unique item generation tool, all of that's fair game.
All right, I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
Just a reminder for everybody attending our series, it really will wrap up at the InPower conference in September in Milwaukee. So hoping to see you all there. And secondly, you're all in line for the swag bag as well, which is the summer cooler and blanket and those things that Sherry has mentioned on previous events. So happy to see the participation we're getting here. Charles, really appreciate everything you're providing here as far as a really nice educational path here about what is CPQ, how can it be implemented, how can it be leveraged, what value does it provide, etc. But if anybody has any questions, we're here to work with you.
Yes, we are.
All right, I think that wraps. Any final comments or contributions, Charles?
No, I'm really looking forward to 2 weeks from now with the roundtable. I'm really excited that we're going to be able to hear from folks that are actually using CPQ and even our unique item generation tool. And I just think that's going to be a great roundtable discussion.
Agreed. All right. Thank you, Charles. And thanks everybody out there. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.